Today I'm going to be showing you my infinite rapid fire build. Now this build doesn't even need a basic. You can use a basic. It actually does hit a little harder in the harder situations if you run a basic, but for group play most times you can get away with not running a basic at all. I've actually run this build for several days in a row with no basic, no problem. Just once in a while I do have to run around for like 5 seconds to get my energy back up, but other than that it can be run with a basic or no basic. I'm going to show you a little gameplay and then we'll jump right into the build. Starting with the skill tree, we do need to take 2 points to progress the skill tree. Especially when you're first building this build, you are going to need a basic. You're not going to get to infinite rapid fire until the build is at least like 60-75% done. So starting off, we are going to take puncture and we're going to take it to vulnerability. We get crowd control with slow every third hit. We get vulnerability every time we hit with 2 blades. Any large target that is moderately close to us will get hit with 2 blades, and that will instantly inflict vulnerability for 2 seconds. Your other route is forceful arrow, which inflicts vulnerability every third hit, and you just take the 1 point, 1 point, and 1 point in the knockback. Personally, I prefer puncture, but if you're starting off the build, you might want to go with forceful arrow to give you a little bit more cushion in pushing back enemies. Next, we're going to be taking rapid fire. Who guessed? Now, there's only one thing that can increase rapid fire, that's your gloves. There's 2 ways you can go with your gloves, and I'll show you both in a moment. One gives you 8 points, one gives you 9 points. You're definitely putting all 5 of your standard skill points you get into rapid fire. Then you're going to take it to gain energy back when you hit a vulnerable enemy. Another reason why puncture is better, because it constantly inflicts, so every rapid fire is guaranteed, because if you hold down A and X, if you do go the basic route versus the infinite fire route, you're always inflicting vulnerability, so whatever target you got in front of you is always going to be vulnerable. And we're also going to have another crowd control on top of that, I'll show you in a moment. So right here, this build basically 100% crits once it's done, so this is just extra move speed. When we are just standing still long range, if we gotta dodge banshees, or we want to flank elites and take out a high value target very quickly, or we want to do damage on a butcher then move, do damage on a butcher then move, in any case 15% move speed basically 100% of the time that we're fighting, so that is pretty good. Next, the one thing that we do struggle in is close range damage. Taking it, we do not want to take it, so we're going to take that damage reduction close range, and we're going to be taking heal when we critically strike in close range, because if we do get into that situation where we do have to fight for a moment close range, we do want to stay alive. Now we crit basically all the time, basically 100% once the build's done, so this basically gives you the ability to heal 3% on your rapid fire or basic and rapid fire, which you're firing at a pretty fast rate, so it does give you a good moderate amount of health back. That combined with Dark Shroud, which I'll show you in a moment, does give you the ability to fight close range for a little bit. It's not your ideal situation though. You would much prefer to be in the back of the group just lighting them up. Next, because we are going to take a bow over the crossbow because it does fire about 20% faster, and we do a lot of vulnerability damage, even though critical strike damage is great, we're going to be taking this weapon mastery for the vulnerability damage. Now this is off gear, don't want the dash. The dash is fine in the beginning, but it's not an end game skill. Honestly, if you want, you can use it though. You do have a little leeway in your skills. There's only a couple that you really need: rapid fire, Dark Shroud, and Ice Imbuement, and the ultimate. Your other 2 are kind of up to you. So you could use dash, you could use smoke bomb, you could use shadow step. Those are all up to you. Now this is kind of needed for the defense because we're so squishy. Dark Shroud is clutch. If you can get extra ranks in your gear and then move these skill points somewhere else, you can do that as well. I actually have that, but I didn't put the skill points there. I just left it at 5 because you don't really get much of a boost per shroud after 5 anyway, so I just capped that there at 5 with the normal skill points you can spend. And then I took the movement speed. Because we're critically striking so high at the end, it doesn't even matter. We're taking movement speed basically, what is it, 4% per shroud, 4% per shroud. Honestly, this isn't really needed, but this build is a very fast stick and move build when we can't sit still. So when we can't sit still, we do want to be able to get ourselves in a position where we can sit still for a moment, or have the opportunity to stick and move and strike. So to break out of freezes, because the reduced elements and all that resistances is all broken at the moment, we do need a way to break out. Now I chose concealment because I only need 2 points, and because this isn't ideal to fight close range, I don't want to be shadow stepping into the group. Shadow step is great, but we're going to have another way to daze them anyway. Here we're going to be taking bonus damage. We hit very hard in the beginning, and we struggle sometimes a little bit at the end if we're not using the basic. So this is huge if you're not using the basic to help finish them off. And if you are using the basic, it just helps you finish them off just a little bit faster for the high-end bosses, because you'll be able to inflict vulnerable at the end. Here we have just more damage against vulnerable enemies. We only need 3 ranks in cold imbuement in order to freeze elites. If you go with 2 and you like hit them with all of it, you're generally not going to freeze them. But with 3 ranks, you will freeze them. So we're going with 3 ranks, and we're also going to be taking a 30% chance to make enemies vulnerable, just in case they aren't vulnerable already and we already hit them once. This just gives us a 30% chance of making them vulnerable again for 1 point, so why not? This is also an excellent build to be running with an ice sorcerer or anybody who can make enemies vulnerable. If you're running with a second person that's constantly making enemies vulnerable and crowd controlling, and you're sitting in the back, you are going to be hitting for 500,000 plus so often, just annihilating the groups. It is really great if you have a tank that can do any type of crowd control, or a sorcerer that's freezing the board. You are going to annihilate the group with them. That is the ideal teammate for this build, just FYI. Now, I took chilled enemies, get their speed reduced 30% further. Now, this is in combination with the basic, or if you take the cow traps and you take it to chill. If you aren't taking the basic and you aren't taking the cow traps to chill or cold damage, which is one of your options for your 2 remaining skills, you don't really need this at all. You would just take the bonus damage with the freeze. But slowing enemies up 30% further, especially when we got them close range, if we are using the basic, or if we're using the cow traps to evade back and get bonus damage on a larger crowd control, either or, we want to slow them up more so we can actually do heavy damage while we're standing still and get that damage while standing still bonus. Next, we're going to be taking lucky hit chance, up to 30% chance to gain 8 energy. Now, yes, we do have that lucky hit chance. We actually have more than that. Now, part of the reason we have it is every 100 energy we spend grants 15 per 5 seconds. Generally, you can easily keep this going 100% for at least 15%. Sometimes within 5 seconds, even ramping it up to 30. Now, here, you could do 3 here, 2 here, and you could do 2 here and 3 here. Because I'm already at the point where energy really is not a problem in the slightest, I took a little bit extra just as a backup when I'm moving around to get it back up, especially if I fire a couple of shots at the end of a battle where they didn't hit anybody. And I took the extra movement speed just because I'm always at max energy anyway. But until you get to that point, you could easily run 3 here as well, and then 2 there. We are going to be taking the precision. We get bonus crit strike damage every crit that we do, or every marksman skill actually, which is even better. I 100% basically crit anyway, so I forgot it was even marksman damage and not crit damage. So every 4 attacks, we gain a 40% increased critical strike damage. Now this benefits you more when you're doing a straight rapid fire build. You could potentially get that 40% bonus on your basic if you are holding down the basic and the rapid fire and you are running a basic. But if you're only using the rapid fire, which is a little bit more risky and takes a little bit to get used to, but you can run it. If you are running that route, then you're guaranteed that 40% every 4th rapid fire, which is pretty huge. Next, let's go over the gear, and I'll tell you all the things you're looking for. Now, on the headpiece, it can run cooldown reduction. This is the only one besides the amulet that can get it. If we can get 2 high cooldown reductions in our build, we can basically spam ultimates because we're reducing the cooldown of our ultimate if we're not running a basic, and we'll get 50% bonus damage while we're using our ultimate, 20% bonus damage while we're not, and basically we should have the ability to get our ultimate back just a few seconds or a couple seconds after that bonus damage ends, if not even sooner before it ends. So that's just a constant 20% bonus damage when our ultimate isn't up, then right back to 50% when we want to use it again. So those 2 cooldown reductions, if you can get both of them, is pretty huge. We are going to need about 100%, plus 100, sorry, intelligence in the build as well for the Paragon. We fall just short of about 100 points to get some of the bonuses, 2 of the bonuses. So if you can pick up 2 high roll or at least 2 mid roll intelligence, or 1 high roll and 1 low roll like I did, then you can get those intelligence bonuses for your Paragon as well. So look out for that in the headpiece as well. Other than that, you're going to be putting the aspect for the barrier on the head. Our only damage resistance that we want to see is damage resistance to close. That is the one we're looking for, our damage resistance. We are looking for physical damage, would be ideal. It runs to the 21%. All our damage for the most part is physical. So physical damage is one of the better ones. If you are running the basic, then you can run the dual or bonus damage when swapping weapons, because puncture is a knife and bow, rapid fire is a bow skill. If you are running the forceful arrow and the bow, obviously you can't use that because then your basic would be a bow skill as well. For the chest piece, also be looking out for a high value increased maximum life and damage resistance to close. Also, the overall damage at a high roll, this one was only mid, is very good as well. That does help. Physical damage and damage are 2 of the ones that we can use to stack our damage a little bit. Now for this one, I chose gain a free dark shadow every 3 seconds. It can roll up to 4. A lot of times we're standing still for 3 to 6 seconds or longer, especially in a holdout. So that's just bonus resistance, especially because we're squishy. And here you have a couple of choices. Now you can use Fist of Fate. Fist of Fate, we have that lucky hit chance for the immobilized. We have the lucky hit chance for the daze, even if it runs at the max value. We got the lucky hit chance to restore primary resource, which isn't really as needed. Lucky hit chance to heal, which occasionally will come in handy. But more often, it's just because we can slightly increase our overall average damage if we get like a 290 to 300 roll. If you're rolling 200 to 250, I probably wouldn't even bother with it. More 280, 290, 300, you can try it out, see how you like it. Now, just to show you the other 2 options for the gloves, there are some swap outs that you can use here, so you got a little leeway and a better chance to get something that you can use. So for the gloves, we do have a standard version of the gloves, which will be looking for attack speed, critical strike chance, critical strike damage, and rapid fire. Our other choice is not that, it is this, where we're looking for attack speed, vulnerable damage, shadow clone damage, that's okay. It's got to have a high roll on the core skills to get us more damage on our rapid fire too. And then we get a little bit chance to summon a shadow clone that mimics our attack, and we hit hard to begin with, not crazy hard, but we fire a lot of shots, so damage per second isn't bad, so that helps out a little bit. Can run that one as well. Those are basically your 3 options for your gloves. If you're going to run the standard one and you're running a basic, or if you're just running a basic attack in general, your other affix that is a potential and probably your best one is to increase the attack of your next core skill after using a basic, because you'll basically be spamming both at the same time and firing them interchangeably. Moving on to the pants. Now this isn't an ideal roll for me. Ideally what you do want is movement speed, high roll. You want intelligence if you still need intelligence to get the bonuses in your Paragon Tree. You want bonus ranks of a skill you're actually using, damage reduction from close. Bonus dex at a high roll isn't terrible. Bonus a high dodge chance is okay. Other than that, we're going for the affix. Lucky hit, dealing direct damage to a vulnerable enemy, has a 45% chance to daze. Now we get 20% lucky hit chance from the rapid fire. We get 15% for using energy. At some points, we can actually cap up into 50% lucky hit chance, but we're more averaging around 35% lucky hit chance, and occasionally getting up to 50% lucky hit chance. Which is another reason just to note, 60 is definitely overkill. We're not really ever hitting over 50. We're more likely having a constant 35 with short peaks of 50% lucky hit chance. This bow is really nice. So this bow, the first direct damage you deal to an enemy is a guaranteed critical strike. So we have a very high critical strike chance to begin with. We're looking for critical strike chance in the gloves if we don't run the Legends Fate. Critical strike chance in all our jewelry definitely should be there, ideally. So we should be fine with critical strike chance, especially with getting the bonuses in the skill tree. But this allows us to, whenever we trigger our key passive, which is quite frequently because we're just spamming attacks, so every 4th attack we're gaining back 24, 25 essence if we get a high roll. So if we can get a high roll there, if we get 3 ranks of exploit passive, which is another 18% on healthy, 18% on injured, we can get high critical strike damage, marksman damage, dex. If you get a good roll on this bow, plus with the long distance, 60%, this is a really nice bow. I can't seem to deal more damage even with using, what is it? Right here I have a 49.5 vulnerable, 54% crit strike damage, 165 dex, 66 distant damage to distance enemies. It does do more damage at the distant. And then you have 2 choices here. You can go with basically almost a guaranteed rapid fire ricochet, which is pretty huge because there's no drop off on damage. So whatever you do on the first hit on that ricochet, you're doing that same damage. So this is kind of like the ideal roll you would want for your bow. Vulnerable, critical strike damage. We maybe want to see critical strike chance if we're still struggling a little bit instead of the dex. Dex isn't bad. Another one would be damage to crowd controlled enemies. Would be really good right here as well. So this really isn't an ideal roll, but yeah, vulnerable damage, critical strike damage, damage to crowd controlled distant enemies. Distant enemies runs huge. This build ideally should be group play. It can handle its own up into high level torments, but once you get into high level torments, and if you want to do the most damage, you want to be in a group. You want to be with a tank that's inflicting some type of crowd control, or a sorcerer that's inflicting crowd control and ice, and then you can just straight melt, just constantly hitting for 500,000 plus. So that is the ideal team you want. You want at least one tank or somebody freezing the board or constantly pulling aggro and crowd control, and then you just sit back and just rain rapid fire. Now for our amulet, we do want energy cost reduction. One big energy cost reduction like this 21.6 That's all you need. You don't need more than that, but one is really nice. Like, it really comes in clutch with keeping our primary resource maxed, which is another reason you could put the bonus damage on the bow if you go with the non-legendary bow and get up to 40% bonus damage when it's maxed, which is basically all the time, and basically it just drops down to like 90% essence and shoots right back up to 100. So you're getting a good deal of bonus damage off that affix. Other ones besides energy cost reduction, we're looking for cooldown reduction. Movement speed is good. Otherwise, we're going for like marksman skill damage, long range damage, vulnerable damage. Those will be our top ones. Then after that, just an all around damage. I forget if damage resistance to close can roll there, but that is not bad as well. We do occasionally have to fight close, so when we do, if we do take a close heavy hit, it is nice to get that damage reduction so we don't get one or two tapped real quick. Moving on to the dual wield weapons. So if you are not going to run a basic skill, ideally you want to run two swords for the bonus critical strike damage. We're looking to see critical strike damage again in the bonuses. We're looking for vulnerable damage, core skill damage is okay, critical strike chance, long range damage, all the same damages. I forgot to mention core skill damage before, but that's another okay one that rolls pretty high. So core skill damage, you can look out for that. Now, if you are not running a basic, obviously these are not going to be unique. So we're going to do critical strikes with core skills, increase our attack speed for 25%. And then we're going to be dealing additional damage while we have a barrier. Now this one only benefits us a little bit, but we get our barrier when we're attacking elites. So this only triggers when we're attacking elites, so it's just bonus damage to elites. So that's why I put that there. There's not really much else useful we can put in that second slot. So this one is actually not that bad. By the way, the gem we're running for all our weapons is critical strike damage to vulnerable. The gem we're running right now for all our armor is damage reduction while controlled impaired. And until they fix the resistances, we're running armor. When they fix the resistances, then we'll be running resistances to all. If you are running a basic, it is worth considering running this legendary dagger or unique dagger. We get bonus for doing 3 combo points, 30% chance to generate 3 combo points as well off every hit. We get core skill damage in here. We get basic skill attack, not really needed. We get damage while dual wield weapons, which is just bonus damage, and critical strike chance against injured enemies. So the bonuses aren't that great, but we do get 40% increased damage when spending 3 combo points. As far as this goes, if you're running a basic skill, you'll run the combo points. If you're not running a basic skill, you'll run preparation. Moving on to the Paragon Tree, and I'll explain why I chose my path and the glyphs that I chose. We'll spend a couple of seconds on each screen so you can copy and paste or pause and go back if needed. So we're going to progress upwards and we're going to go to this glyph. Now, chose the marksman skill damage because basically all we're using is marksman besides the occasional trap or imbuement. Then we're going right back to marksman. Also, if you're not using a basic, this is a constant 10% reduced damage because we'll only have the bow out. So this path right here will give you the bonus damages over here. Might as well pick those 5% up. Other than that, this is the path to get the most intelligence while getting all the dex required to max out this glyph. We're not taking any unnecessary basic points over here. We're just maxing out the glyph, taking the bonus damage on this side, and then progressing upwards. Moving on to the second board. While I don't have all the names of the boards readily available, the legendary node of this board is Tricks of the Trade, so just scan for that board. This is the board that you want. Position it with the legendary affix node right there. We'll be coming in here and getting the damage to distant enemies, taking the path of least resistance up. We only need to get 4 points to get like 60% or something bonus damage to distant enemies, so that's pretty huge. We'll be grabbing this bonus damage to elites because it's on the way as well. Now, these 2 points for intelligence, you don't need to take if you got 2 high rolls on intelligence on your gear and you don't need it for the bonus. I needed it. I will show you on the last board where you'll be taking 2 other nodes if you don't need to take this intelligence right here. So moving up, we're going to be taking this glyph for bonus physical damage. We've capped this out as well. We've gotten as much dex as we could for this glyph, capping out at 92.4 physical damage, giving us up to 10% bonus damage on an enemy for 15 seconds, 1% per hit, rapid fire fires 5 times, hit an enemy twice, that's 10% bonus damage, continually use rapid fire on an enemy like a boss, that's just a constant 10% extra damage. So that is really nice. So for 3 points, we will jump over here and we'll get this extra armor. Also because this plus 10 dex applies to this glyph. So that is just bonus physical damage as well. Now we're going to be coming out this board 2 ways. We'll be coming out right here. And we'll be coming out over here. Moving on to the third board. The legendary node for this board is Exploit Weakness. Took damage to elites on the left, once again taking the path of least resistance while maxing out the glyphs. We get 97% critical strike damage with core skills here. Another massive bonus, skills that critically strike restore 12% of their essence cost or energy cost. This is really big if you're not using a basic, pretty much needed. Now, I just missed the bonus here. If I would have got a higher all stat in the gear, I would be able to have this bonus. But even for 4 points coming down here to pick up 25% extra vulnerability damage and 10 dex is well worth it. Ideally, I will be going for that higher all stat roll and picking up that 10% as well. Then we had to come over here for the intelligence to get the increased critical strike damage. Plus we picked up that bonus potion healing. Then we come up here for even more bonus damage to vulnerable enemies and bonus damage to injured enemies. Moving on to our fourth board. Our legendary node for this board is No Witness. We have bonus damage to healthy enemies and critical strike damage right here. As I was talking about in the gear, why you want 2 high intelligent rolls. One is to get this bonus damage to healthy enemies, but even more so, the bonus over here is 10% all damage. So definitely want to get that bonus. And over here, we got the glyph. We get 130.7 damage to crowd controlled enemies. We can slow, we can chill, we can freeze. Ideally, we're behind a tank or a sorcerer that's freezing. So we get even more damage to that crowd controlled. A lot of different builds crowd control in one way or another. We can daze, so that is a huge number on anything crowd controlled, so that is really big. Then just to show you, we'll leave it over here just for a second. So if you need to freeze, you can copy and paste that. Moving on to our last board. Our legendary node of this board is Cunning Stratagem. Now we're going to be taking this because all we're using basically is rapid fire for our damage. We get 28% core skill damage right there. Bonuses is just 340 strength and 340 intelligence. Very easy to meet those marks. You'll meet them just by copying and pasting the Paragon Tree. We get another 28 core skill damage here, another 10 dex. Then we're going to be coming over here to the glyph. We're going to be doing 38.8 increased vulnerability damage. Sadly, there's no way to really get this number higher. Can't place it anywhere else. Everything is optimized. But this, more importantly, when we strike an enemy for the first time, they become vulnerable for 3 seconds. Now, it can't happen to the same enemy once every 20 seconds. It only can happen to the same enemy once every 20 seconds. But it is really big to put in opening damage. This clears out ads. Lets you put in heavy damage fast on elites. then you can proc your own vulnerability or days and then finish them off or freeze them. Next, we're going to be taking this armor down here because this increases the dex as well. Also, because we have to grab this strength and then this strength for the dex. So we might as well pick up this armor. And lastly, we'll be coming over here and we'll be picking up this 10% bonus damage, less for the basic skill. Picking up this bonus damage. Like I said, if you did happen to get very high rolls on your intelligence and you don't need these two over here, then replace those two with this basic, but more importantly to get 5% more additional damage. And that is my infinite rapid fire build. Very fun to play. You can just sit back, no basic needed in order to play this build. And also, there's a lot of swap out in the build. Like, you could put pretty much any skills as the support skills, whether you use a couple points in Shadow Step, whether you use a couple points in Cow Traps, whether you put a couple points in Smoke Grenade, or it's really dealer's choice. The build, everything is set up for rapid fire, and then you can invest like half a dozen points in the support skills that best suit your playstyle. Personally, I like the concealment and cow traps is generally what I go for. And if I do play with a basic for a moment, I can play with the puncture. Another nice thing is it's really easy to swap those in and out for just about 100 grand without having to really rework the Paragon Tree or anything. Changing them out one way or another really doesn't affect the build. It's just swapping how you play the game a little bit. If you liked the video, leave a like, comment, share. It helps others find the video. I hope this helped.